What's going on, summoners? Welcome back to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and today we're talking about 5 sleeper OP picks and builds that you should be abusing for some free LP. You already know the popular OP picks and builds since they're all over social media, including our own YouTube channel, but in this video, we'll be looking at some of the lesser known builds today. So hit that sub button, and let's get right into it. So the first pick we're talking about today is Neko as a top laner. Neko has been doing pretty well across the board just about all season long, but aside from the occasional Neko main that you run into every few weeks, you don't really see her all too often. And when you do, 9 times out of 10, it's either mid or as support. But she's actually even stronger as a top laner. Neko is a complete lane counter to just about every meta bruiser and juggernaut in the role. Starting from level 1, you'll be able to harass them a ton with her ranged autos, especially with her empowered autos from W's passive. Q meanwhile gives extra poke and pushing power, so you should have lane priority in pretty much any matchup, while E serves as your disengage, rooting your opponent in place anytime they try to run at you for a trade. So chip away, whittling your opponent down until you force them back to base. Once you have an opponent stuck farming under their tower, you can then start using your E aggressively. The goal is to land that, combo it with your Q, and throw in an auto to proc electrocute for huge harass. Just make sure that you back off once E's on cooldown if you're against an opponent like Camille or Jax that can jump on you during that window. One big weakness that ranged top laners suffer from is how easy it is for a lot of the bruisers and tanks to just go for an all-in and turn the lane around post 6. But as Neko, since most of your trading comes from Q poke, you don't have to get within range of your opponent's engage to deal damage. Besides that, Neko actually has a lot of all-in potential herself. Her ult is insane for teamfighting, but it's equally strong in a duel to the death. The shield blocks a good portion of damage while dealing a lot to an opponent that throws themselves into melee range of you. The subsequent stun also allows you to easily hit your E and Q to make it a full-on combo. With all that burst damage, you'll win just about any fight, and worst case scenario, you can just chain CC to make a retreat back to your tower. So let's talk about the build for Neko top. For runes, you'll run Electrocute, Sheep Shot, Eyeball Collection, Ravenous Hunter, Mana Flow, and Transcendence, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, you want to start Thorin's Ring, Rush Sork Shoes, and then build into a Rocket Belt. Against an opponent with lots of healing, pick up an Oblivion Orb at this point, and if you're trying to bully your opponent and you want to deal more damage, you can also go for a Horizon Focus Rush. But if you're feeling less confident or you just want to push your lead into team fighting, you can go for Azonias instead. After that, go for Void Staff and Rabadons, and finish things off by upgrading to Morellonomicon. But as we always remind you during these videos, part of what makes sleeper OP picks so successful is the fact that nobody plays them. Objectively speaking, they may not be better than or even as good as the most popular picks, but when your opponents don't know how to play against them, you get that extra little edge in the fight. But of course, that alone isn't quite enough to win all of your solo queue games. You also need the skill to get those early leads and the know-how to use those leads to win games. And that's where we come in. At ProGuides.com, we got courses from all your favorite streamers and pros like CoreJJ, Aframu, and Xmithy to help you fully understand how to play your role. But if you want an even more personalized one-on-one experience, we also have top-tier coaches available 24/7 to help you anytime you want. So if any of that sounds interesting to you and you're serious about leveling up, come check us out. But back to the video, our second sleeper OP pick for this patch is Wukong Jungle. Though Riot has hit him with a couple of nerfs in a row, more than anything, they're just a placebo change. Barely anything has actually changed in terms of win rate, and Wukong remains an incredibly strong champ that brings a lot to the table for any comp. His dueling's pretty good, his skirmishing is great, and his teamfighting is amazing. Despite how strong he is though, he isn't really picked too often, and when he is, it's almost always as a top laner. But what's really crazy is how slept on he is as a jungler. The one explanation I can think of for that is maybe how weak his ganks are, especially pre-level 6. His gap close is pretty short range, so opponents have to be really overextended for you to find kills, and even then he's pretty easy to disengage from. But in my opinion, that is an okay cost when you consider his fighting strength when it comes to going head-to-head with the other jungler. Being able to stand up to strong early game picks like Lee Sin, Rek'Sai, and even Xin Zhao is a pretty impressive feat, and one that makes him not nearly as team reliant. You don't need your mid laner to win mid and have priority for scuttles. You just need them to go at least neutral and prevent you from having to fight a 1v2. And when your laners do have priority, you can even invade the enemy's camp since you know you'll win the 1v1 if you find them there. But you aren't just picking Wukong to bully the enemy jungler. There are of course other picks that can do that too. The real reason Wukong is so OP is his strength in teamfights. Wukong's ult is one of the most busted 5v5 abilities in the game. Some champions have huge AoE CC, some champs have big damage, but he's got both. And to top it off, since he spins around for quite a while and can cast it a second time, opponents that flash away can still easily be caught up to. And then you have to talk about the fact that his clone casts it too, effectively letting you ult at least 3 or 4 people in most cases. So now that we've sold you on the pick, here's the build. For runes, go Conqueror, Triumph, Alacrity or Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Transcendence, with the stat runes being Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Armor. For items, start Ember Knife and build either Gore Drinker or Divine Sunderer first. Gore Drinker is better for teamfight durability, while Divine Sunderer is better for dealing single target damage, especially if the enemy team is full of beefcakes. After that, go Merc Treads or Steel Caps, Black Cleaver, Death Stance, Sterix Gauge, and Guardian Angel. Up next, we have a build for a Trundle that's been doing pretty well, but isn't played nearly enough. So we thought it needed a spot on the list. I'm talking about Imperial Mandate Trundle Support. Trundle Support is generally a pretty strong pick overall. You just pair with an AD carry that can easily fight 2v2s and force all-ins with your pillar. While creating terrain may not seem like the most useful utility to have as a support, it's actually perfect for playing kill lanes. It's basically ranged CC that you cannot miss, so once Flash is down on an immobile champion, you can pretty much farm them. And if you're against a more aggressive bot lane, Trundle's ability to steal the enemy AD carry's attack damage for himself can absolutely help swing fights in your favor. All this said, you don't want to be stuck playing Trundle with a weak early game AD carry like Ezreal. In a lane like that, you're not going to go for all-ins, and if you can't do that, you're basically stuck doing nothing as you take harass from your opponents. So if you're going to pick this, make sure that you tell your AD carry, pick something for early game. Now here's the build. For runes, you'll run Guardian, Font of Life, Second Wind or Bone Plating, Unflinching, Biscuit Delivery, and Approach Velocity, with the stat runes being Adaptive Force, Armor, and Magic Resist. You'll probably notice this rune page is different from what most would consider the standard Trundle support page at the moment. Most players run Hail of Blades for a cheesy, bursty all-in with Pillar and Lane, but this one's a bit more consistent. Plus, running Font of Life means that you can pick up Ardent Sensor if you have an auto-attack heavy team. For items, you'll start with Steel Shoulder Guards and build into Imperial Mandate and Lucidity Boots. Up next, grab Knight's Vow and either Zeke's Convergence or Ardent Sensor. Your last item will be Wardstone. Personally, I love this build, but I've had a couple of discussions with people that think it's kind of bait. So if you give this one a try, make sure to come back and let me know how it feels in the comments below. And since I got the support main on this video, we got another support to go over. That one being Pyke with a couple of changes to the standard build. Pyke has a lot to offer as a support. He's amazing at roaming, he's good at early game skirmishes, especially once you have your ult, and he's also good in most 2v2s if you play him well enough. But of course the big thing is his ult. His ability to generate extra gold by last hitting means that you can snowball you and your AD carry really fast. And he doesn't really fall off for teamfights either. While it may not be quite as consistent as say a Leona or Nautilus ult, a well done E-Flash combo can surprise opponents that aren't ready for it. As long as you get the reset with each cast, his ult gives a ton of finishing power. And if you think that the extra gold from his ult can snowball you bot lane, just wait till you see the action in teamfights. If you successfully land it on all 5 enemy champs as they die, that's an entire extra 1500 gold for you and your team. But I teased it, so what's the change in the standard build that I'm talking about? Well, first, what you want to start doing in every game is going for Umbral Glaive as your first completed item after boots. Umbral Glaive is a pretty cheap item, costing only 2600 gold to build, so you'll spike quicker than you would by building a mythic first. On top of that, it gives a ton of vision control, so you're able to deny the enemy their wards and keep your snowball rolling even harder. As a nice bonus, you'll also kill wards in a single hit, which is something I can appreciate since spike attack's pretty damn slow. The second change up is a bit more situational though. Duskblade of Drakthar is the go-to mythic on Pyke because of how well it works with his ult. You usually start off fights with an E and then ult into the fray once the target is low enough, but with your E now being down, you don't have a way out. With Duskblade's stealth on getting a takedown, and now you can remedy that. It may only be a brief stealth, but it's usually long enough to chain your next ult or just get a bit away from the danger. But not all games are going to be so teamfight centric. If you have a pick comp, you should try going Stride Breaker instead. If targets are sitting back, you often will struggle to land your E on them, so most of the time you'll use your dash to get in range and then try to land hook to pull them back into your waiting team. But if you played Pyke, you know it can be pretty hard to actually land your Q on an uninhibited target. More than anything, it's a mind game where you hope that they juke into the hook. But going Stride Breaker on Pyke is kinda like going Everfrost on a mage. You now slow your target and make it much easier to land your skill shot. Aside from those change-ups, the rest of the build will usually stay the same. You'll start Steel Shoulder Guards, rush Moby Boots, and build into 2 items. Then you'll finish your build with Edge of Night and Yomu's Ghostblade. For runes, go Hail Blades, Cheap Shot, Zombie Ward, Relentless Hunter, Second Wind, and Unflinching, with the stat runes being double adaptive force and armor. Though I've seen plenty of people call Pyke a broken / mindless / easy to abuse champ, I honestly think he's got one of the highest skill caps for supports. There's a reason why he's one of the most abused smurf supports in the game. But is he the hardest support to play perfectly? That brings us to today's question of the day. Which champ do you think is the hardest to master in each role? Or if you don't want to go through all of them, the hardest to master in your role? Let me know your answers in the comments down below. Now finishing off our list, we have Zyra in the mid lane. We've covered how OP Zyra support has been for the past few months in our meta videos, but she's not just OP in the bot lane. Everything that makes her dominant down there also extends to her being played as a mid lane carry. While she may be squishy, Zyra's basically untouchable for the melee matchups that dominate the meta. She's got tons of pushing power, and if your opponent tries to contest the wave, you just greet them with constant poke from both your spells and plants as they spawn. And going for an all-in isn't exactly a winning strat against Zyra either. She isn't just some dainty poke mage that crumbles when you get in her face. In fact, her damage in an all-in is just as scary as burst mages like Syndra and Annie. Just combo your opponents with your root and ult, spawning as many plants as you can in the area. You will pretty much always trade back a kill if you even die at all. Just make sure that you're maxing E anytime that you play her. Some people mistakenly max Q, but it doesn't actually do that much for you. You want your E for the root duration so you can guarantee your ult gets the knockup and your plants get as many hits as possible. Outside the lane phase, playing Zyra isn't exactly rocket science. You play to poke as much as possible, constantly summoning plants with your Q from afar to chip away at opponents that are barely on the same screen as you. And when it's time to fight around objectives, try to deter the enemy team with your poke, and if they choose to contest it, try to make the fight happen in a choke point where you'll get the best results with your ult. Now for runes, you'll run one of two pages. The first is Arcane Comet, Mana Flow, Transcendence or Absolute Focus, Gathering Storm or Scourge, Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace, with the stat runes being a double adaptive force and either armor or magic resist. For your items, start with a Doran's Ring and then build into Liandry's Anguish, Sork Shoes, Demonic Embrace, and Void Staff. After that, you can go for Rylai's Crystal Scepter and Rabadon's Death Cap, but if you need the safety of Zhonya's, you can always replace Rylai's with it. And that wraps things up for our sleeper OP builds that you're missing out on in patch 11.17. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you're subbed to the channel so you never miss out on our meta guides, and you're always in the loop of what the best picks are. Also, remember to let us know what you think is the hardest champ in the comments down below. And one last thing, don't forget to check out our Discord too in the description box below, where you can discuss League further or just hang out and be part of the community. That's it for today though, so best of luck on the Rift everybody. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.